Here's Kennedy doing the walk of shame. And her mom had to come get her because he did something to his car. I fucking hate you. What?
Hello, today we talk about Republicans and THC corruption. Okay, so on Monday, we had talked about Clarence Thomas coming out and saying that he believes the whole federal viewpoint of weed is at both silly and paradoxical, and that it should probably be changed by now. And that's a lot coming from Clarence Thomas, of all people. So at the time I said, you know what, that's a pretty big thing for a Republican to say, and I know a Supreme Court justice isn't supposed to have a party, but you know what, he votes on party lines, so he's a Republican. And you would think it would have some sort of ripple effect going beyond him. And so today there's a story out of Politico that kind of talks about what Chuck Schumer has to do to get people on his side to pass any kind of federal legalization. Apparently he'll need to convince 10 Republican senators to back this bill. And that is a steep hill to climb. There are, as of now, as far as we're aware, 2 senators that would not support legalization, but would support decriminalization. And that is kind of how Chuck Schumer has been framing it. So that kind of still fits into it. And those 2 senators are Lisa Murkowski and Richard Shelby from Alabama. Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. Richard Shelby does not support legalization fully. His state has just legalized, earlier this year, his state has just legalized medical marijuana. And he was asked specifically, does he think that him not supporting federal legalization is kind of going against his constituents? And he said, quote, "I don't know, you got to have some principle yourself." And that's an interesting thing, because I think what it's showing is that there are a lot of Republican senators who are still stuck in that whole hippie stigma. Like, Republican senators tend to skew old, or senators tend to skew old, and they are still used to kind of the 60s and 70s view of marijuana being just fueled by the hippie revolution, fueled by people who were stoners, or like, you know, the thing that the media put out there. And so despite most of people in most states believing that weed should be legal, these Republican senators are still stuck on that mindset of the last many decades of seeing weed and associating it with other harder drugs and all of this stuff. So it's going to be a really, really difficult thing for Schumer to get these 10 Republican senators on his side. One last thing that the article said was that the Drug Policy Alliance isn't starting to lobby anybody until this bill is introduced. So we don't have a great sense of how many Republican senators are even close to considering, because there has been no lobbying done yet.
What's up, guys? Darius, where the hell are the boards?
Not again, doggy.
Shit, I gotta go back and get them.
Oh, shit! Oh, shit! Oh, shit!
Okay, second story I found very interesting out of 538 was, so we, as a weed society, put a lot of emphasis on THC and THC potency, and whether or not it should be higher, whether or not it should be just, you know, free reign, or we should cap it at some point. And also, when we're just buying weed, we want to know how much THC it has, which apparently there's a study that came out that didn't find a huge correlation between higher THC potency and a more subjective high. That's a different story. Maybe we'll talk about that later. This article focuses on the labs that find the THC levels of marijuana, and what it found was that there are quite a bit that don't have a lot of regulation and tend to skew higher in their THC despite the plant actually not having that amount. This is because each lab that is being used is all for profit, and they want basically as much plant coming to them as possible. They want as much product that they can get, and the people who are giving the products would rather it have higher THC because you can charge more for it. And when they find that they go to this lab, wherever that tends to give them higher THC levels, they will go to that lab more often because they're getting more expensive product from it. So it becomes this kind of mutually beneficial relationship between the two, and because there's no oversight, they can just get away with it until every once in a while somebody does an audit or somebody kind of checks it out. So for instance, there was a 2019 audit of Oregon's testing system that claimed it cannot ensure that test results are reliable and products are safe in all of the Oregon's testing system, which is incredible. Another one says that in 2015, data was published that showed 4 labs in Washington state never failing any of their samples for microbial contamination in a 3-month period, while other labs in the state had about a 45% failure rate of plants. It's clearly showing that they're not really even testing, that they're just kind of like putting it in, saying, yep, it's good, and then putting it out, which means that there's probably mold, there's probably other contaminants in this marijuana, and the fact that that's just happening and still happening there because there isn't this widespread kind of regulation system, it's going to continue happening probably until we have some sort of federal legalization. So the entire article really brings into question, should we really put as much emphasis on THC because it A, maybe doesn't have as much to do with your high than we think, and B, is not really even something that we can trust as an actual number because it's skewing so differently depending on which lab you're going to. That will change eventually, but for now, that's how it is. Thought I wasn't recording my audio. That's the stories for today. We're done. We'll see you on Friday for some more.
Just a quick heads up for you, if you're going to be heading south on Highway 2 towards Assiniboia and you're looking for a place to park, we found the place for you. Sure is handy. I'm Leroy, he's Leroy behind the camera. There's always something to do.